Kieran Jackson had 3 rules when it came to his company. Don't get emotionally involved, don't mix business with pleasure, and above all, never fall for anyone in the building, especially not assistants. Yet the moment Florence Daniels walked into his office, clutching a broken heel in one hand and a stack of resumes in the other, he felt the first crack in his resolve. "I'm not late," she announced breathlessly, cheeks flushed, "but I am 1 shoe short." Kieran leaned back in his leather chair, blinking at the woman who had just barged into his 10th-floor office like a hurricane with a clipboard. She looked like she'd sprinted across Manhattan, hair wild from the wind, a run in her tights, and a confidence in her eyes that didn't match her disheveled state. "I wasn't expecting anyone today," he said slowly. "I know. The agency sent me. Your previous assistant quit this morning. Left a note that just said, 'Good luck.'" She gave him a tight smile. "So, here I am." He looked her over. She wasn't like the usual polished, robotic types they sent from corporate staffing. No expensive handbag, no designer heels, well, one heel and no fake smile. She didn't try to flirt or flatter. She stood there, completely herself. Honest. Bold. "I'm Florence," she added after a beat. "But most people call me Flo." Kieran exhaled.
"Fine. Sit down."
"Let's see if you can survive the day." She nodded and limped to the chair, still holding the broken heel. He didn't know then that the girl with the ripped tights and zero filter would end up turning his world upside down. Kieran Jackson was a millionaire, the kind of man who didn't talk about money because his lifestyle did it for him. Corner office in a glass tower. Black Bentley parked downstairs. Penthouse in Tribeca. A watch that cost more than most people's cars. He built his marketing tech firm from the ground up, brick by brutal brick, and now he ran it like a fortress. He didn't have time for crushes. Especially not after what happened with his last assistant, a harmless flirtation that turned into a PR nightmare. Since then, he'd sworn off any emotional entanglements at work. But Flo threw all of that off balance. She wasn't scared to speak up. She didn't care who he was. When the CFO tried to pass blame in a meeting, Florence calmly corrected him on her second day. When the coffee machine broke, she fixed it with a hairpin and a paperclip. And when Kieran snapped at her during a stressful call, she didn't cry or quit. She blinked, waited, and then said, "Are you done being dramatic, or should I come back in 5?" It was infuriating.
And addictive.
On Friday afternoon, she walked into his office holding 2 coffees. "The barista messed up your order. I told him you don't like foam." He said, "That guy never smiles." I said, "Yeah, but he tips like a king." Kieran glanced up, barely hiding a smile. "You bribed him into getting my coffee, right? I told him you'd buy the entire cafe if he didn't." He took the cup. "You're not wrong." She grinned and turned to leave, but he stopped her. "Flo, yeah? Why take this job?
You're
not the temp agency type." Her eyes shifted, just for a second. "It's temporary. Just need a few paychecks. I'll be gone before you even notice." He did notice. Every time she laughed down the hallway. Every time she challenged a board member without blinking. Every time she stood up for someone without hesitation. He noticed everything. The following week, there was a fire drill. Everyone filed out of the building. Kieran stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed, already annoyed at the wasted time, when he noticed Florence arguing with a man in a suit near the back of the crowd. Kieran moved closer. "I said no," she snapped. "You don't get to just show up here." The man, probably in his early 50s, grabbed her arm. "You owe me for the loan. I want to talk." "I paid you back 2 years ago," she hissed. "You just want control again."
Kieran didn't think.
He stepped between them. "Is there a problem?" Florence looked startled, but the man paled. She's not interested."
"Leave. Now."
The man looked once at Kieran, tall, cold, expensive, and walked away without a word. Flo stared at him. "You didn't have to do that." You looked like you were going to punch him. I figured I'd save you the HR paperwork. She gave a small laugh, but there was something tight in her voice. He's my stepfather. Used to loan me money just to control me later. It's a whole thing. He nodded. You always this fearless?
No.
I just learned to stop backing down. And that's when it happened.
The shift.
He stared at her, not as his assistant, not as the girl with the clipboard and the coffee, but as a woman who had faced down more than one kind of fire and still stood tall.
Fierce. Brave. Real.
He was in trouble. The next Monday, he caught himself watching her again. She was laughing with the interns. She made everyone feel seen. She didn't care about titles. She didn't chase status. He was daydreaming about her. At work. Again. He shut his laptop harder than necessary.
No.
This was getting dangerous. He didn't do this. He didn't fall for assistance. He didn't fall for anyone. But she wasn't just anyone. That night, as he stepped into his car, his driver glanced at him through the mirror. You good, sir? Kieran stared out the window toward the office building. There was a light still on in his office. A silhouette moving across the glass. She was still up there. He gave a soft, bitter laugh. I swore I wouldn't do this again, he muttered. But it was too late. He was already falling. By Wednesday, Kieran had rewritten the same email 3 times. He wasn't someone who second-guessed himself. He made decisions in boardrooms that shifted stock prices. He'd walked away from multi-million-dollar deals without flinching. But now, typing an innocuous message to Florence about rescheduling a meeting was suddenly a mental obstacle course. He ended up deleting the entire draft. He couldn't afford to be obvious. Not when she worked 15 feet from his office and had no idea the effect she was having on him. She knocked on the glass wall and pushed the door open before waiting for a response. Your call with the Tokyo team was moved to 6:30. Their translator's late. Kieran nodded, forcing his eyes to stay on the schedule in front of him. Thanks. Also, there's a charity gala next week. You're on the guest list. Black tie, press coverage, the usual. You want me to RSVP? He leaned back in his chair. What's it for? Some foundation that funds literacy programs. They're honoring you with a plaque. Apparently you donated a building. Right. He rubbed the back of his neck. I forgot about that. She tilted her head, arms crossed. Must be nice. Forgetting about buildings. He gave a quiet exhale through his nose. I didn't forget the donation. Just the ceremony. Florence studied him for a beat. You going? He looked up at her and said, more quickly than he meant to, only if you come with me. Her eyebrows rose. As your assistant? No, he hesitated, then added, as my date. The room thickened with silence. She didn't look away. That's a bad idea. I know. You're my boss. I know that too. She narrowed her eyes. And yet you still asked. I figured I'd rather risk a no than keep pretending I don't think about it. Florence didn't respond right away. She leaned against the doorframe, gaze unreadable. If I say yes, she said slowly, what happens after? I don't know, Kieran admitted. I've never asked anyone who worked for me anything like this. She gave a quiet, almost wry laugh. Well, that makes 2 of us. Then, after a beat, she nodded once. All right. One night. Black tie. I'll try not to spill anything on your suit. He didn't smile, but something in his chest loosened. The next few days moved differently. The air felt charged, like something unspoken hung between them. They didn't talk about the gala again, but it lingered at the edge of every glance, every brush of hands as they passed documents. By Friday, Kieran had arranged for a car to pick her up. He didn't ask her what she was wearing. He didn't send a stylist or a dress. That wasn't her. She wasn't someone to be packaged or transformed. She arrived at the penthouse at 7, exactly on time. Kieran opened the door before she could knock. She wore a navy gown with a low back and a slit that stopped just above the knee. Her hair was swept up, a silver pendant resting along her collarbone. No flash jewelry, no excessive makeup. Just her, elevated. You look, he started, then stopped himself.
Come in.
She stepped inside, taking in the sleek space with a glance. So this is where you disappear to after work. He adjusted his cufflinks, watching her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. Not much of a mystery. Depends who's asking. They didn't linger. The driver was already waiting. As they descended in the private elevator, she kept her arms folded. Still time to back out, she said lightly. You trying to talk me out of it? I'm making sure you know what you're doing. Headlines love inappropriate workplace romances. I don't care what they love. She turned her head toward him. You should. I care about what I want, he said simply. And tonight, I want to be seen with you. She looked away, but her voice was quieter when she said, Then let's go. The gala was held at a museum near Central Park, all marble columns and golden lighting. Cameramen clustered outside the entrance, waiting for someone important to arrive. Kieran stepped out first, buttoning his jacket, then turned and offered her his hand. Florence took it. The moment they stepped onto the carpet, cameras flashed like lightning.
Kieran didn't flinch.
He moved with practiced ease, but he kept her close, his palm gently resting on the small of her back. Inside, the crowd parted for him. CEOs nodded. Politicians waved. Waiters in white gloves offered champagne. Florence took it all in, but she didn't gawk. She moved beside him like she belonged there, like she didn't need to prove herself. She asked questions. She listened. She made eye contact. And when someone asked if she was the new partner at Jackson and More, she didn't correct them. Kieran watched her from across the room as he spoke to a senator. She was standing near a sculpture, laughing quietly with a woman in emerald satin. Her hands moved when she spoke, animated, alive. He didn't hear a word the senator said. Later, as the speeches began, Florence slipped into the seat beside him. You hate this kind of thing, don't you? She whispered. I like the cause. I don't like being congratulated for doing what should already be done. She nudged his arm with hers. That's surprisingly decent of you. He turned his head slightly. Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my image. When his name was called, he stood, accepted the plaque, said something appropriately gracious into the microphone. But when he returned to his seat, he didn't care about the applause. He cared that she was smiling at him. They left just after 10. The car was quiet, the city lights flashing by in streaks of gold and red. Florence turned to him. Why me? He looked at her. You really want to know? I think I deserve an answer. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Because you don't treat me like I'm untouchable. You're not afraid to tell me when I'm wrong. You don't care about who I know or what my name's worth. You care about people. You fight for them. You fought for yourself. That kind of courage. It's rare. She didn't say anything. I know it's complicated, he said. The job, the risk. But I'm not asking for a future. I'm asking for a chance. Florence exhaled slowly, her fingers tightening around her clutch. I've spent a lot of time building a life that didn't depend on anyone else. I don't get swept up easily. I'm not asking you to get swept up. I'm asking you to let something in. The car stopped outside her apartment building. She looked at him, long and hard, then opened the door.
Before stepping out, she paused.
You're not who I expected, Jackson. That's not a compliment. Not yet. Then she was gone, heels clicking against the pavement, the night swallowing her silhouette. Kieran sat back, heart thudding like he'd just stepped off a ledge. He didn't know where this would go. But he knew he wasn't turning back. Florence didn't speak to Kieran for 3 days after the gala. He'd expected something to shift between them, an acknowledgement, a conversation, anything. But she walked into the office Monday morning dressed in a crisp white blouse and navy slacks, her expression unreadable, her greetings professional. She handed him the day's reports with the same calm efficiency as always, and didn't linger in his office longer than necessary. Kieran didn't push. He wanted to. He wanted to demand to know what she was thinking, if he'd overstepped, if she regretted saying yes. But the words never left his mouth. Instead, he watched. Not in the way he had before, not with curiosity or intrigue, but with a quiet ache in his chest that he couldn't name. Her laughter, once effortless in the hallways, was quieter now. Her replies clipped. She was building walls again, and he had no idea why. On Thursday evening, he found her in the break room, pouring hot water over a tea bag. She didn't look up when he entered. "Do you have a moment?" he asked, voice low. She turned, eyes tired. "Is this about the board packet? I left it on your desk."
No.
"This isn't about work." Her shoulders tensed. "Then maybe it's better we don't talk. I'd rather not keep guessing what I did wrong." She looked at him for a long moment. "You didn't do anything wrong." "Then why won't you look at me the same?" Florence set her cup down. "Because I can't afford to." He stepped closer. "I'm not asking you to give up anything. I'm just trying to understand." "I liked that night," she said quietly, "more than I should have. And when I woke up the next morning, I remembered exactly how this ends. You go back to being the man with a million things pulling at him, and I go back to being the girl who didn't belong in that world to begin with." Kieran's jaw tightened. "You don't get to decide how I feel based on a version of me you've imagined." She folded her arms. "Then tell me, what happens when you get bored? When the next shiny thing walks through that door?" "I haven't been interested in anyone in over 3 years," he said, the edge in his voice unmistakable. "Do you really think I'd risk this if it were temporary?" Her eyes flickered. "I don't know what to think. I've never had someone like you look at me and mean it." "I mean it," he said. "I couldn't stop thinking about you if I tried." She didn't reply. Instead, she picked up her cup and left the room without another word. That night, Kieran stood alone in the penthouse, staring out over the city. He hadn't fought for much outside of business. Everything came too easily: deals, power, respect. But this felt like walking a tightrope without a net. And he had no idea if she'd catch him if he fell. The next morning, a call came through from the front desk. A woman claiming to be Florence's mother had arrived unannounced and was demanding to see her. Kieran walked to the lobby himself. The woman standing at the front desk bore no resemblance to Florence. Her clothes were too tight, her hair dyed a harsh red, and her voice sharp as glass. "I'm here for my daughter," she said without preamble. "She's been ignoring my calls." Kieran's tone cooled. "This isn't a personal address. You'll need to leave." She narrowed her eyes. "You must be the boss. I can see why she's pretending she's better than us now. I'm going to ask you one last time. Tell her mother's in town. And she still owes me." Kieran didn't answer. He waited until the woman turned and stormed out. When he returned to the office, Florence was already at her desk, typing furiously. He didn't say anything, but she looked up, eyes already brimming with fury. "You spoke to her, didn't you? She gave your name. I came down to handle it." Florence stood up. "What did she say?" "Enough that I'm not letting her near you again. I can take care of myself," she snapped. "I know that. But you don't have to keep doing it alone." She froze, the words hitting harder than either of them expected. Kieran stepped closer. "I don't care who she is or what she wants. Whatever it is, it ends here." Florence's voice was quiet. "She's not even my real mother. She married my dad when I was 5, drained our bank account, then left when he got sick. When he passed, she showed up again looking for inheritance that didn't exist." His chest tightened. "You never told me. It's not something I like leading with. You've been carrying all of that by yourself? I didn't have a choice." "You do now." She looked at him, eyes flickering with something between defiance and disbelief. "You keep saying that," she whispered. "But what happens when I need more than just words?"
"Then I'll show up," he said.
"Every time." The next day, Florence missed work.
She didn't call.
Didn't email. Just didn't show. Kieran tried to rationalize it. Maybe she needed space. Maybe she was dealing with her stepmother. But by noon, he was checking with building security. By 2, he was standing in front of her apartment door, knocking. When she finally opened it, he saw it on her face: panic, exhaustion, and something close to shame. "I didn't want you to see this," she said softly. The apartment was small.
Sparse.
A single couch. A coffee table with chipped paint. A box fan humming in the window. "Did something happen?" "I couldn't stop thinking about what you said. About not doing it alone. And the truth is, I don't know how to let someone in without already preparing for them to leave." He stepped inside, closed the door behind him. "I'm not asking you to change overnight. I'm not used to someone showing up just because they want to." "I didn't come here because I want to," he said, voice low. "I came because I need to." That night, they didn't talk about work or the gala or her mother. They sat on the floor, sharing takeout from a single container, knees brushing. She told him about her father's bookstore and how she used to fall asleep in the back room with a flashlight and a stack of novels. He told her about the first time he got rejected by a client and how he punched a wall so hard he fractured 2 fingers. They laughed. They argued over which movie to watch. She fell asleep with her head on his shoulder, and he didn't move for hours. When he finally left, long after midnight, he pressed a kiss to her forehead before quietly closing the door. He didn't need answers. Not yet. But he knew one thing for certain. He was already in love with her. Florence hadn't come into work the next morning either, but this time, Kieran didn't panic. He knew exactly where she was. He found her in the quiet corner of an independent bookstore tucked between a laundromat and a florist in the West Village. She sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through a worn copy of a poetry collection, her coat pulled beside her. The place smelled like old paper and cinnamon tea, the kind of scent that made you feel like there was still a little magic left in the world. "I figured you'd find me," she said without looking up. "You left your calendar open on your desktop," he replied, crouching beside her. "Lunch at Greenlight Books. You really thought I would notice. I was hoping you'd pretend not to." He reached for the shelf beside her and picked up a hardcover with a cracked spine. "I'd rather be here than pretending we're strangers in the office again." She placed the book in her lap and finally looked at him. "I've been thinking." That's rarely a calm statement. "I know what this feels like. But I also know what it means to be with someone who holds more power than you do. I don't want to be the woman people whisper about in boardrooms." "Then maybe you should stop worrying about what other people say and start trusting what you feel." Florence opened the book again, running her fingers along a line of text. "I want to believe this could work. I just don't know what happens to me if it doesn't." He leaned closer, voice low. "Then let's not let it fall apart. Let's stop waiting for it to break." They sat in silence for a long moment, surrounded by the hum of the heater and the creak of the wooden floorboards. Finally, she closed the book and stood, brushing off her jeans. "Walk with me." They left the shop and wandered down the street, passing murals and stoop sitters and kids hopping over sidewalk cracks. Florence paused in front of a window display of antique postcards. "I used to collect these. My dad would bring one home every time he went out of town for a book fair. He said they were tiny stories from strangers." Kieran scanned the window. "I never collected anything. Everything I wanted, I just made happen." "That sounds lonely." It was efficient. Florence turned toward him. "You're not efficient anymore." "I'm not trying to be." They walked until the city dimmed around them, the sun sinking behind the skyline. In that golden hush of evening, she reached for his hand not with hesitation, but with intent. Later that week, Kieran called a meeting with HR. Not to hide anything, but to protect her. I'm removing her from any direct reporting lines, he said. She'll transition to a lateral role in a different department. No special treatment. No favors. Just a clean slate. The director raised an eyebrow. You understand how this looks. I understand I'm not going to let optics dictate my personal life. She's earned her place here without me. Then let's make sure the restructure reflects that. When Florence found out, she walked into his office after hours, her expression unreadable. You made it official, she said. You asked them to move me. I didn't want anyone to say you got here because of me. She stepped closer. I didn't ask for protection. It's not protection. It's respect. Florence looked at him in a way that made the air between them shift. You're not the man I expected, Kieran Jackson. You've said that before. I didn't mean it like this. He waited. I've spent so long surviving, I forgot what it feels like to be chosen, not rescued, not fixed, just seen. He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. You've always been seen. I just made sure you knew it. She kissed him then, soft but sure, like she wasn't afraid anymore of what would happen if she let herself hope. They didn't rush anything. They didn't make grand declarations. But they stopped pretending. They share mornings now, quick coffees, newsprint smudges on fingers. She kept a key to his penthouse but still lived in her apartment because, as she put it, I like remembering how far I've come.
Kieran didn't argue.
He understood. They were building something that didn't need to follow anyone else's blueprint. One Friday evening, they attended a private event for one of Kieran's new ventures, a tech incubator designed to fund women-owned startups. Florence walked beside him in a slate blue dress, minimalist and elegant, her hair down for once, curling slightly at the ends. The rooftop buzzed with music and champagne flutes, but Kieran only saw her. She was speaking with one of the founders, asking sharp questions, sharing a bit of her own story without embellishment. The woman laughed, reached for Florence's hand, and said something Kieran couldn't hear, but the smile on her face made his chest tighten. After the crowd thinned, Florence found him near the terrace railing. You're staring, she said. I'm allowed. She leaned on the railing beside him. You're doing good things. Only the beginning. She tilted her head. What changed? You used to keep everything close. Now you're handing out capital like candy. He looked at her. You. Me? You reminded me what it means to be human in the middle of the empire. You made me care again. Florence glanced out at the skyline. That's a lot of pressure. It's not pressure. It's gratitude. He turned toward her, pulling something from his pocket, not a box, not a ring. A small, worn postcard. She took it gently. It was a black and white photo of an old bookstore with a bicycle parked out front. On the back, in neat ink, for all the stories we haven't told yet. Her fingers trembled slightly. Where did you find this? I bought the whole set from that shop in the village. Figured I'd keep giving them to you one at a time. She looked up. Why? Because I want to write every news story with you. Florence folded the postcard and held it to her chest. You don't need a ring to prove anything. I know, Kieran said, but I have one anyway. She blinked. He pulled a small velvet box from his inner jacket pocket and opened it. Inside lay a ring, elegant, understated, a sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds set in platinum. Not flashy, but quietly breathtaking. I didn't plan to do this here. Or now, he said. But I've never followed a traditional script. So I'm asking you, Florence Daniels, if you'll marry me. Not because I need to rescue you. Not because I want to possess you. But because every day I wake up wanting to become the man you already believe I could be. She stared at him, eyes shining, lips parted like she couldn't quite decide if she was dreaming. Then she nodded, slowly but with certainty. Yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, and the world seemed to hold its breath just long enough for them to realize they weren't falling anymore. They'd already landed. Later that night, as they stood barefoot in the penthouse, the city glittering beneath their feet, Florence whispered, "You broke your rule." Kieran brushed his thumb along her jaw. "Which one?" "You swore you wouldn't fall for someone at work." He kissed the corner of her mouth. "Then I guess I'll have to rewrite all my rules." And this time, they'd write them together. Florence stood at the edge of the rooftop garden, her fingers curled lightly around the railing as the early spring breeze stirred the hem of her dress. The city hummed below, awash in golden light, the kind of evening that made everything feel like a beginning. Behind her, the soft clink of glass and the mellow chords of a string quartet drifted from the open doors of the penthouse. Every face inside belonged to someone who had shaped the last year of their lives: investors, colleagues, founders, a few close friends. The event was technically a celebration of the first anniversary of the Jackson Women's Initiative, the incubator Kieran launched after their engagement, but everyone knew the real reason for the gathering. It was the first time they were appearing publicly as an engaged couple. Florence turned her head slightly at the sound of approaching footsteps. Kieran came to stand beside her, his tie loosened, two champagne flutes in hand. "You disappeared," he said, offering her one. "I needed air," she replied, taking a slow sip. "Didn't expect this many people." "You're the reason they're here. Half the founders came just to see you. They came for the foundation. They came because you believed in them before anyone else did," he said. "You've built something real. They know it. I know it." Florence glanced toward the penthouse, where one of the women from the first round of funded startups was laughing with the CFO of Kieran's firm. "They keep thanking me, but I feel like I should be thanking them. They gave me a reason to stay." Kieran tilted his head. "You were thinking about leaving? Before all of this?"
Yeah.
"I had a plan. Save up. Move out west. Start over somewhere no one knew my name." She looked up at him. "But then you happened, and nothing felt small anymore." He reached for her free hand. "You made my life bigger. Not louder. Not flashier. Just fuller." The doors opened again, and one of the new project managers waved them back inside.
Dinner was about to be served.
Kieran leaned in. "You ready to sit through 7 speeches and 3 overly dramatic toasts?" "I can handle speeches. Just don't let your board chair start quoting Shakespeare again." "I make no promises." Inside, the room quieted as the lights dimmed, and the host took the mic. As people clapped and laughter rippled through the crowd, Florence let herself study the man beside her. Kieran had changed in ways she hadn't expected. He still commanded a room, still moved through the world with the confidence of someone who'd built his empire from nothing. But now there was warmth beneath the sharp edges, a sense of purpose that extended beyond profit margins and quarterly goals. Later, after the plates were cleared and the music softened, Florence stepped away to speak with the woman who'd just secured her second round of funding through the initiative. Kieran watched from across the room, a quiet pride settling in his chest. She didn't need him to be her spotlight. She created her own, and somehow, she still chose to let him stand beside her in it. When the last guests had gone, and the staff began clearing away empty glasses and candle stubs, Florence kicked off her heels and curled up on the couch in the penthouse's sunken lounge. Kieran loosened his collar and joined her, letting his head fall back against the cushions. "You know," she said, staring at the ceiling, "this is the first time I've ever worn a dress that cost more than my rent." He glanced over. "You looked like you belonged on every magazine cover in the city." "Don't get used to it. I'm back to sneakers and coffee stains tomorrow." He reached for her hand. "I wouldn't change a thing." She turned her face toward him. "You still sure about this? About all of it?" Kieran sat up, facing her fully. "Let me show you something." He walked to the bookshelf and pulled out a leather-bound portfolio. Inside were architectural sketches, clean lines, exposed beams, High ceilings, warm woods. You're building something? She asked.
We are.
It's the new headquarters for the initiative. But it's more than that. It's also a public library, a free daycare center, and a community workspace. Her eyes scanned the pages. This is huge. You said once your father believed in stories. I want this place to be filled with them. Florence looked up, blinking. You did all this without telling me? I wanted it to be a surprise. But there's more. He flipped to the last page. It showed a small plaque design. The Florence Daniels Center for Possibility. She stared at it, speechless. I don't want your name hidden in the footnotes, Kieran said. You changed lives. You changed mine. The world should know. Her voice was thick. You can't just do things like this. I can. And I will. Every month. Every year. For the rest of our lives. She reached for him, pulling him close, and he wrapped his arms around her without hesitation. I love you, she whispered against his shoulder. I love you more than I've ever loved anything, he said. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that. The following morning, the city was quiet under a sky washed pale with early light. Florence stood barefoot at the window, coffee in hand, watching the streets come alive below. Kieran joined her, his arms sliding around her waist. I was thinking, she said, maybe we don't wait too long. For what? For the wedding. I don't want something massive. No press. Just something real. He kissed her temple. Tell me when and where, and I'll be there. For weeks later, in a stone garden tucked behind an old library in Brooklyn, Florence walked across a path strewn with wildflowers. Her dress was simple, the sky clear, and the only soundtrack was the soft rustle of leaves and the quiet hum of strings from a local trio. Kieran waited beneath an arch of ivy, his eyes never leaving her. Their vows weren't rehearsed. They didn't need to be. I promise to never let you forget who you are, she said. Not the version the world sees. The real one. The one who listens more than he talks and cares more than he admits. Kieran's voice was steady. I promise to never stop choosing you. In silence and noise. In chaos and calm. Every day. There were no fireworks. No grand pronouncements. Just two people who had built a life not around perfection, but around truth. Afterward, they shared cake with 20 of their closest people, danced barefoot on a wooden deck, and watched the sun set over the water. That night, in a borrowed brownstone near Prospect Park, Florence curled into Kieran beneath a linen blanket, her ring catching the light as she traced lazy circles on his chest. You know what I realized, she said. What? This isn't a new chapter. It's a whole new book. Kieran smiled, eyes closed. Let's write every page together. And they did. Through board meetings and bookstore visits. Through setbacks and surges and slow Sundays spent in bed. Through laughter that echoed in their kitchen and quiet moments that didn't need words. There was no grand final act. Just a life that kept unfolding, one breathtaking, imperfect, unforgettable moment at a time. And they never looked back.